Hi, I'm Judy Litt. Today I am sharing something a little bit new for my channel. I am pretty excited for this. I hope that you are really going to enjoy this. Anything might go. I'm expecting a package. Bandit's over there. There could be barking. My husband should probably get home in a little bit, so there could be fits and starts. For this restorative practice, where we're going to target our hips, hip hip hooray, you are going to need all the props, or at least as many as you can gather. I have got 3 blankets over here. Now, you don't have to have these Mexican blankets. Um, a towel will work. Any kind of throw will work. Any kind of blanket that you happen to have around will work. They can be optional, but one of the things about restorative yoga is to prop yourself up so much that you can completely relax. A couple of blocks. Here's one. I suggest if you have a pretty sturdy block, that's a good thing to have. These are my cork blocks. They're quite sturdy. What else? A couple of bolsters, if you have them. Couch pillows can work very well in place of a bolster. They don't have to be fancy bolsters, but I will tell you right now that I really love these bolsters. And without further ado, I think that's really kind of all that you need to know right now. Let's get into our first pose. It takes a little setup. Restorative yoga takes a little setup. And we hold the poses for a long period of time like we do in yin. And our first pose, oh, well, let me give you the intention. My intention for this practice is to release our hips. Indeed, I did run earlier today. Maybe release some emotions, because sometimes when we release those hips, we can release some emotions as well. And just relax. Really, that's the name of the game when it comes to restorative yoga. Relax. We don't relax enough. Alrighty then. So for this first pose, we're going to come into Pigeon. If you're a runner, you may be very familiar with Pigeon. And we are going to need several blocks. Several props. You shouldn't need any blocks for this pose. So go ahead, put them over to the side. I actually like to use my smaller bolster, which is called a pranayama pillow, underneath my leg, and I like to use my thicker bolster underneath my head and arms. So that goes, one bolster will go kind of towards the middle of your yoga mat, and the thicker one, well, the other bolster will go more towards the top of your yoga mat. And it's up to you. Play around with it. Take that first minute and see. Maybe if you have 2 different size bolsters, maybe you want the thicker one. And I would also, for this pose, take a blanket and unfold it a bit so that it's wider. And then fold it again. Basically, we're going to put this under our leg to keep our leg nice and happy. And so I'm going to just lay this out, kind of butting up right against that bolster in the middle. And taking this blanket, getting all the kinks out of it. There we go. This is just something soft that your leg can relax into. Go ahead and come to a tabletop position over the middle bolster. Go ahead and step your right foot over it so you're into a low lunge, and then just begin to heel toe your foot over towards the long end of the mat. And if you're familiar with Pigeon, this is what it looks like, except we've got a bolster underneath our leg. It allows us to have a little space We don't torque the knee quite so much. We're trying to get the leg kind of parallel to the bolster. Back leg is straight out behind you. And again, you need to play a little bit with this other bolster. I like to try and get my head on top of it. And we are, of course, going to do both sides. So bring your forehead down onto your bolster. Come onto your elbows on the bolster, if that feels good for you. If having your hands just kind of sitting there doesn't feel right to you, you might want to grab a couple blocks. Maybe put your hands up on blocks. If you have another bolster, you can also just put it in front of this one, and then your hands have something to do. Or they can just lay over the bolster as I have them. And then just like yin yoga, which shares a lot of similarities with restorative yoga, we're going to hold this pose approximately 5 minutes. And we're going to breathe in and out through our nose. Just beginning to take attention to that breath. Noticing how when you take attention to the breath, you can take a fuller breath. Your breathing slows down. And maybe your mind begins to slow down. And my last thing I want to tell you before I'm quiet is that it's entirely possible for some emotions to come up. And my suggestion is don't label them good or bad, just notice what arises for you. And see if maybe you can just let that go. And just try and be still and hold this shape until you hear me talk again. Got about 30 seconds left. Slowly begin to take your hands underneath your shoulders, leaving your forehead on the bolster, and then begin to push into your hands and push yourself up slowly. Never rush through your transitions. Begin to take that leg back around from the bolster and maybe just move it around just a little bit. Get a little motion and lotion back into that hip before we move on to the second side. So this time, step your right foot over the middle bolster and then begin to heel toe that foot over towards the left. Left leg comes out straight behind you. Right leg is parallel to the top of that middle bolster. And then bring your forehead down to the top bolster. And one side may feel very different for you than the other. Few of us are really balanced side to side. It's perfectly normal. And once again, take your attention to your breath. Breathing in and out through the nose. Feeling the body get very heavy. And beginning to let go. Just sit with whatever arises for you in this shape. It can be very challenging for many of us to just simply hold still. But there's a lot of healing in stillness. And of course, I need to mention, if you ever feel any pain in any of the poses, back out of it. Don't ever want to feel pain in yoga. If you can adjust, and maybe you need to take a different practice or take a different pose, And just make sure you're not in pain in any of your poses. I have about a minute left in this pose. Pigeon is a really great pose for runners or anybody who has tight hips. But it's not an easy pose for a lot of bodies. But it is an easy pose for a lot of bodies, unfortunately, to get injured. By using the props in restorative yoga, we greatly lessen the chance of injury. Doesn't mean it can't happen, so listen to your body. Last couple of breaths. Last breath. Go ahead and take your palms to your mat underneath your shoulders. Begin to press into those palms to lift your head and torso away from the mat. Carefully begin to lift your right leg up and move it back over to the other side. And then step it back. And maybe you want to, again, just do a few circles with that leg. And maybe even just a few hip circles to kind of just release everything we've just worked on. If you're using a blanket on the bottom third of your mat, I suggest that you leave that there. You don't need your second bolster for the next position. You do need one bolster, and this time we're going to turn it so that it's facing the short end of your mat. Get this out of the way. And take your blankets so that they are kind of long lengthwise, and then just roll them up. You may or may not want them, but better to have them than not. Move everything out of your way. We are coming into a supported half frog. So we're going to be laying kind of with our abs on the bolster. We're going to take our left leg and bring it up so that the knee is bent and it's running parallel to the short end of the mat. And your shin is coming at a 90-degree angle from that bent upper leg. Foot is flexed. And try to find where the right space for you is. If you've rolled up those two blankets and put it on either side of your bolster, you can go ahead and take your bent elbows your forearms to those blankets so that they're not reaching and there's no effort there. And if it's comfortable for you, go ahead and turn your head towards the left. So you're turning your head towards that bent left leg. Now this is supported half frog. Another hip opener. Also gets a little bit into the groin, a space that we often don't stretch very much. If it's comfortable for you, of course, you can always take your forehead to the bolster. I prefer to have my cheek on the bolster. And just come to stillness and let go. Last couple of breaths here. Last breath. Go ahead and begin to straighten that left leg out behind you. Turn your cheek so that you are facing towards your right leg and bend that right leg so that the upper thigh is parallel to the short end of the mat. Knee is about 90 degrees. Calf is perpendicular to that thigh and foot is flexed. Second side. If anything is tensing up for you, see if you can just soften it, maybe even 10%. Maybe just by taking your attention to that area. And maybe just visualizing your breath going to that area, blowing through it, unblocking anything that may be blocked. And last minute. Really just let go. Last couple of breaths. Last breath. And go ahead, once again, take your palms to your mat or the floor, about underneath your shoulders. Take that right leg and bring it back to meet the left leg. Slowly begin to press into your palms and bring your head and torso upright. Take the big toes together and your knees out almost as wide as the mat. And just briefly stretch back into a child's pose. Let any tension that may have gathered in your low back, let it go. And take your hands by your body. Slowly begin to push your torso up. For our last pose, which is bound ankle pose, but we're going to be on a bolster at an angle. You will need that bolster. You will need a couple of blankets, maybe even 3. So you need 2 rolled up blankets on either side of your bolster. The bolster is resting on 2 blocks. One is at the medium height and one is on the tallest height, and you may need to play around with it. I find I often need to play around with it to make things comfortable. And you'll notice I have, well, actually you can't notice, I have a blanket here, and it is the long way, and I'm going to roll it up. So basically it's kind of a long sausage shape. Kind of looks like this. And we are going to literally bind our ankles. So you're going to get into position with your low back at the bottom of the bolster and bring the soles of your feet together, and then you're going to take this blanket shape and you are going to wrap it around those ankles. So this takes a little doing. There we go. And we're trying to actually bind it up pretty good. And then you're going to lay back. And in my case, I find I need to bring those other rolled up blankets a little closer. And then I just let my forearms rest on them. I have them palms up. If it feels better for you to have them palms down, go ahead and do that. You can even move those blankets so that your knees are resting a little on them and you are not opening your hips up too much. So one of the big differences between yin yoga and restorative yoga is in yin yoga we're trying to, it's a lot like strength training, except we're working on our connective tissue and we're trying to stress it so that it can grow stronger. Whereas in restorative yoga, we are propping ourselves up so much so that there's no efforting and we can just relax and let go. Relax your jaw, relax your face. Let your shoulders, your upper back feel very heavy, very relaxed, very supported. Relax your jaw and your forehead, your entire face, and let go. If your palms are facing up, go ahead and place them so that they're down. I like to take my hands behind my neck just to support my head as I slowly come up. Otherwise, your neck can hyperextend. Not a good thing. And feel free to stay longer. If you have the time, I highly recommend it. I am going to link up at the end of this practice Savasana, corpse pose. At the very least, I definitely suggest that you stay for that. I will also link up a longer, deep relaxation practice. I really hope that you enjoyed this practice and are feeling very, very relaxed and perhaps feeling very open in your hips right now. And you can expect to be seeing some more restorative practices coming in the future. And always remember, every day, go inside and find the calm and the peace and the happiness that is waiting for you there. Have a great day.